Emily had always been fiercely independent, juggling a demanding job, her 2 teenagers, and the responsibilities of running a household on her own. That morning, as she hurried to leave for work, she tried to start her old sedan, only to hear the engine cough, groan, and die, leaving her frozen in frustration. She banged the steering wheel lightly, muttering under her breath, realizing that she couldn't fix this herself. After a moment of hesitation, she pulled out her phone and called her stepson, Ryan, who was 22 and her husband's son from a previous marriage. Ryan had always been reliable, quiet, and surprisingly skilled with cars and anything mechanical, and though Emily and he didn't see each other often, she respected him and trusted him more than anyone else for this kind of situation. Within 20 minutes, Ryan appeared in his casual jeans and a hoodie, carrying a toolbox, his calm presence filling the driveway in a way that made Emily feel both nervous and unexpectedly fluttery. As he opened the hood and began inspecting the engine, Emily lingered nearby, sipping her coffee and trying to distract herself, though she couldn't help noticing how focused he looked, the way his fingers moved over the engine with ease and confidence, and how the sunlight caught the faint strands of hair falling over his forehead. There was an unspoken comfort in watching him work, a reassurance that the problem would be fixed, but there was also a strange electricity in the air she couldn't ignore. Ryan hummed quietly, muttering some technical words that Emily didn't understand, and finally declared, "It's the starter. I can have it running in an hour." Relief washed over her, and she smiled, feeling her chest tighten for reasons she didn't entirely understand. As Ryan worked, Emily kept herself busy, commenting on mundane things, work, her kids, the weather, but every now and then their eyes met, and a flicker of something unspoken passed between them, subtle and fleeting yet oddly powerful. She found herself stealing glances at him, noticing the gentleness in his movements, the warmth in his expressions, and the way he seemed completely in his element, yet somehow aware of her presence, almost as if he enjoyed the quiet companionship. The hour passed quickly, filled with the soft clinking of tools and the occasional hum of conversation, and when Ryan finally wiped his hands and closed the hood, the car roared to life, filling the driveway with the sound of victory. Emily felt a rush of gratitude and a strange, tender flutter in her heart, and she found herself saying, almost breathlessly, "Thank you, Ryan. I don't know what I'd do without you." He nodded, a faint smile tugging at his lips, and said simply, "Any time," his eyes lingering a second longer than necessary, sending an unexpected shiver through her. As he packed up his tools and prepared to leave, Emily stood there longer than usual, feeling her heartbeat quicken and a quiet longing she couldn't quite name. The morning had started as just another problem to solve, a broken car and a busy schedule, but it had shifted into something entirely different, an encounter that left her thinking about him, about the warmth and care he had shown, and about feelings she wasn't ready to fully understand. She watched him walk down the driveway, the sunlight catching the edge of his jacket, and realized that something inside her had subtly changed, a mix of admiration, unexpected attraction, and curiosity about what this connection might mean. Emily knew she had to focus on her day, yet she couldn't shake the memory of his steady hands on the engine, his easy smile, and the way he had looked at her, calm and attentive, making her feel seen in a way she hadn't felt in a long time. That morning, what seemed like a small favor, a simple car repair, had awakened something in her, an emotional stir she wasn't ready to name but couldn't ignore, and as she walked back into the house, she caught herself glancing out the window, hoping she might see him again, knowing deep down that the encounter had left a mark on her heart, gentle yet undeniable, a spark that promised change, unexpected moments, and perhaps the start of a story she hadn't anticipated but couldn't wait to explore. The engine purred like a heartbeat under Ryan's care, and Emily realized that sometimes, help comes when you least expect it, in ways that touch more than just your problems. They touch your heart, leaving a lingering warmth, a soft ache of longing, and a quiet hope for connection, for understanding, and for moments of gentle companionship that make life feel fuller, richer, and a little more extraordinary than before. She went about her morning routine, yet her thoughts kept drifting back to Ryan, to his soft confidence, to the kindness in his voice, and to the unspoken bond that had formed in that brief hour, a bond that was innocent yet charged with subtle emotion, leaving her both excited and unsure, aware that something new and delicate had begun, a chapter she hadn't expected in her orderly life, yet one that whispered of possibilities, quiet emotions, and a connection that might change everything in ways she couldn't yet define. After that morning, Emily found herself thinking about Ryan far more than she ever expected, and every time she did, a mix of emotions stirred within her, gratitude, admiration, and an unfamiliar warmth that made her pulse quicken. She told herself it was silly to feel anything beyond familial appreciation, yet the way he moved with quiet confidence, the gentle way he spoke, and the subtle attention he gave her when they were together lingered in her mind like a soft melody she couldn't forget. A few days later, Emily had another minor repair around the house, a leaky kitchen cabinet hinge, and she decided to ask Ryan for help again, pretending it was purely practical, though secretly she found a small thrill in knowing he would come over. When he arrived that afternoon, dressed casually and carrying his usual toolbox, Emily felt an unexpected flutter, a nervous excitement she hadn't anticipated, and she wondered if he noticed it too. The moment was quiet, almost domestic, but charged with an energy she couldn't explain. The sunlight spilling through the windows highlighted his calm focus, the slight smile he offered as he worked, and the way he seemed completely at ease while fixing the problem. Emily found herself talking more than usual, sharing stories about her day, her kids, her small worries and fleeting triumphs, and Ryan listened attentively, occasionally nodding or offering a quiet word of encouragement, never interrupting, never judging, making her feel understood in a way few people ever had. As the minutes passed, she noticed details she had never paid attention to before, the warmth in his eyes when he looked at her, the gentle curve of his lips when he smiled, the way his hands moved confidently over the tools, fixing things with patience and skill, yet occasionally brushing against her hand or arm, making her catch her breath. For Ryan, the moments were just as significant. He noticed the tension in her shoulders, the subtle sadness behind her smiles, and the strength she carried in managing her life with quiet resilience, and he felt a protective, tender affection that went beyond simple family connection. Emily tried to focus on the work, handing him tools and moving around the small kitchen space, but she couldn't ignore the pull she felt toward him, the fluttering in her chest whenever their hands nearly touched, or the way her gaze lingered on him longer than necessary. At one point, Ryan paused and looked at her with a soft, almost hesitant smile, and Emily felt her heart skip a beat, realizing she had been holding her breath without noticing. She quickly looked away, chiding herself for feeling things she shouldn't, yet there was no denying the emotional current running between them, subtle but undeniable, tender and gentle, innocent yet charged with longing. They worked in companionable silence. For a while, the only sounds being the faint creak of the cabinet, the occasional click of a tool, and the quiet hum of conversation as they exchanged mundane updates about work, school, and neighbors. Emily felt a rare sense of comfort being around him, as if she could let her guard down for a moment, breathe deeply, and just exist without pretending everything was perfect, and for Ryan, being with her was equally grounding, a chance to see a side of her few people got to witness, full of warmth, humor, and quiet strength. When the repair was finally done, Emily stepped back and admired the result, and Ryan wiped his hands on a rag, glancing at her with that same soft, lingering look that made her cheeks warm. "There, all fixed," he said casually, but there was a subtle intimacy in his tone that Emily felt in her chest like a gentle tug. She thanked him, her voice softer than usual, and he smiled, packing up his tools, but neither of them moved quickly to leave. Instead, there was a pause, a quiet moment where the world outside seemed to melt away, leaving just the two of them, standing close in the kitchen, hearts quietly racing. Emily realized she was acutely aware of him in a way she couldn't fully explain, feeling drawn to him, aware of the subtle chemistry between them, and yet also knowing that she had to respect boundaries, to tread carefully, and to understand her own emotions before acting on anything. Ryan seemed equally caught, his eyes reflecting a depth of feeling that spoke louder than any words could, and Emily felt the bittersweet pull of attraction and propriety, longing and restraint all at once. As he finally turned to leave, there was a brief touch of hands, accidental or intentional, she couldn't tell, and a shared glance that held more than it should, a quiet acknowledgement of emotions neither of them were ready to name. Emily closed the door after him, leaning against it with a soft sigh, her mind racing with thoughts, her heart full of feelings she wasn't ready to confront, yet aware that the connection with Ryan was growing stronger, more complex, and more emotional than she had anticipated. In the following days, she caught herself imagining him helping around the house, laughing together, exchanging quiet glances, and feeling that inexplicable flutter every time she thought of him. The house, once a space of routine and responsibility, now felt alive with possibilities, a stage for tender moments, emotional discovery, and subtle longing that neither Emily nor Ryan could fully articulate, yet both felt deeply. Emily realized that her life had quietly shifted. What began as a simple act of helping her with repairs had become something more, a connection layered with admiration, subtle attraction, and emotional intimacy that neither of them could ignore. Every visit, every shared task, every glance carried the weight of unspoken feelings, and Emily knew that navigating this growing bond would require careful thought, honesty, and patience, but she couldn't deny the quiet joy and warmth she felt in his presence, the thrill of being truly seen, and the tender hope that life had brought her an unexpected companion, someone who understood her, cared for her, and stirred her heart in ways she had thought were long forgotten. As she went about her day, she kept replaying his smile, his soft voice, and the way he had been near her, and she realized that this connection with Ryan, gentle yet charged, innocent yet emotionally deep, was something she couldn't ignore, a subtle force reshaping her thoughts, emotions, and perhaps her future in ways both terrifying and beautiful. The quiet moments of their interactions, the soft laughter, the shared silences, and the gentle care he showed in simple acts created an emotional bond that felt delicate yet undeniable, filling Emily with hope, curiosity, and a longing she had not anticipated, leaving her wondering how much closer their hearts could grow without crossing boundaries, and what this new, tender connection might mean for both of them. In the days to come, knowing that life had given her a chapter full of emotion, subtle romance, and heartfelt discovery that she was just beginning to explore. A week later, a sudden storm swept through the town, darkening the sky and rattling the windows of Emily's house, leaving her scrambling to keep her children entertained while managing the sudden power outage. Candles flickered on the countertops, casting warm shadows across the walls, and Emily felt a quiet sense of unease despite her efforts to stay calm. Just as she was moving from the living room to check on the kids, there was a knock at the door, hesitant but firm. Her heart skipped a beat when she saw Ryan standing there, soaked from the rain, his jacket clinging slightly to his frame, carrying a small tool bag as though he had expected the worst and come prepared. "I heard about the storm," he said softly, his voice calm yet carrying a warmth that immediately made Emily feel safer. "Thought you might need some help." Relief washed over her, and she found herself smiling despite the wet chill in the air. Ryan stepped in without waiting for an invitation, setting down his bag and immediately surveying the minor damages the storm had caused, the flickering lights, the broken fence gate outside, and the subtle leaks that had formed near the kitchen window. He worked quickly, efficiently, yet with a careful attention that made Emily feel both impressed and strangely comforted, watching the way he moved, steady and deliberate, his hands sure even in the wet and chaotic environment. As they worked side by side, the storm roaring outside, there was a quiet intimacy in the air, the kind that comes from shared effort and unspoken understanding. Emily found herself talking more freely than ever before, sharing small confessions, fleeting worries, and little joys, while Ryan listened, occasionally offering a gentle word of reassurance or a soft laugh that made her chest feel lighter. It wasn't just the practical help he provided, it was the presence he brought, the calm in his eyes, the ease of his demeanor, and the subtle attentiveness that made her feel seen, appreciated, and safe. At one point, they paused to catch their breath, leaning slightly against the kitchen counter, and their hands brushed while reaching for a tool. The contact was brief, but it sent a shiver through Emily she could not ignore, and she quickly looked away, hoping he hadn't noticed the heat rising to her cheeks. Yet, when she glanced up, she caught a fleeting, almost hesitant look in Ryan's eyes, a depth of emotion that mirrored her own, and for a moment, time seemed suspended, the storm outside fading into background noise. They continued their work, fixing the minor damages, setting up a small generator, and ensuring the house was comfortable despite the storm, and through it all, Emily became acutely aware of the connection growing between them, subtle but undeniable, filled with admiration, trust, and an emotional intimacy that she hadn't anticipated. Ryan, for his part, noticed the small things about Emily too, the way her brow furrowed slightly when she was concentrating, the gentle sighs she let out when tired, the soft laughter she tried to suppress, and the resilience she carried quietly through the chaos. He felt a protective warmth, a genuine care that went beyond any step-parent relationship, and he realized he valued these moments more than he had expected, finding himself drawn not only to her kindness and strength but also to her vulnerability and humanity. After ensuring everything was in order, the rain still pattering softly on the roof, they stood near the door, water dripping from Ryan's jacket, catching glimpses of each other in the dim candlelight. "I should go," he said finally, a small hesitation in his tone that spoke volumes, yet there was a softness in his voice that lingered in Emily's heart long after the words left his lips. "But, thanks for letting me help. I enjoy being here with you." Her chest tightened at his words, the gentle honesty in them stirring feelings she had tried to keep tucked away, a mixture of longing, gratitude, and a quiet excitement she couldn't name. As he stepped out into the storm, Emily found herself lingering by the door, listening to the fading sound of his steps, realizing that this simple act of kindness, his presence during a storm, had created something more, a connection that was emotional, tender, and growing in intensity. She returned to her children with a flutter in her chest, aware that something inside her had shifted irrevocably, that the bond between them had deepened, and that her feelings, though complex and cautious, had taken root in a way that was both exciting and terrifying. Over the following days, Emily replayed the evening in her mind, the warmth of his presence, the attentiveness in his gestures, the quiet moments of shared laughter, and the lingering, unspoken emotions that had passed between them. She caught herself imagining him coming over again, the sound of his voice, the steadiness of his hands, and the gentle encouragement in his eyes, all of which created a longing she could not fully articulate. Emily began to recognize that what started as simple help with practical matters had grown into emotional support, shared trust, and subtle attraction, an awakening of feelings she hadn't allowed herself to acknowledge before. She realized she valued his presence more deeply than she had expected, noticing how his laughter could lift her spirits, how his careful attention made her feel secure, and how the quiet understanding between them filled a space in her life that had long been lonely. The storm, the rain, and the night had created a backdrop for a moment of emotional clarity, revealing the depth of connection that had been forming in small, almost imperceptible ways over the past days. Emily understood that she was at a crossroads, torn between propriety and desire, admiration and longing, caution and the urge to explore the growing bond that had begun to consume her thoughts. Ryan had become more than a helper, he had become a presence she craved, a source of comfort, warmth, and subtle excitement that lingered in her heart. Each memory of that evening brought a mixture of joy and tension, a sense of sweetness wrapped in the bittersweet knowledge that their growing connection was delicate and complex, yet undeniably powerful. Emily spent the next few days reflecting, walking through her home with a heightened awareness of his potential return, imagining the conversations, the quiet moments, and the laughter they might share again, and each thought brought a soft thrill and a tender ache she could not ignore. She realized that what she had felt in those stormy hours, the attentiveness, the shared effort, the silent glances, and the warmth of his presence, was more than temporary comfort. It was the beginning of something meaningful, subtle, and deeply emotional. The connection had grown into a quiet, irresistible pull, a mixture of trust, admiration, and tender longing that neither of them could fully name, and Emily knew that navigating this delicate terrain would require patience, honesty, and an openness to feelings she had never confronted before. The storm had passed, but its impact remained, leaving Emily with a sense of awakening, a renewed awareness of her own desires and emotions, and a soft hope that Ryan's presence in her life could become something more, a source of emotional depth, romantic tension, and heartfelt connection that promised to change her life in ways she hadn't yet imagined. She found herself smiling softly at the memory of the evening, the quiet moments, the fleeting touches, and the unspoken words, realizing that the bond they were forming was precious, tender, and real, and she looked forward to the next time he would come, The next opportunity for connection, and the gentle unfolding of emotions that had begun to bloom between them, delicate yet undeniable, filling her heart with both anticipation and warmth, a soft, lingering promise of what might come next in this unexpected, emotional, and slowly blossoming relationship. A few days after the storm, Emily decided to invite Ryan over for a casual dinner, telling herself it was just a friendly gesture, a way to enjoy company while keeping the evening light and easy, but deep down, she felt a flutter of anticipation she hadn't expected. She prepared a simple meal, setting the table carefully, the warm candlelight creating a cozy, intimate atmosphere, while her heart raced at the thought of him arriving. When Ryan came, carrying a small bouquet of flowers he said were for her, Emily felt an unexpected rush of emotion, a mixture of gratitude, admiration, and a subtle thrill she couldn't quite define. The evening began with laughter and conversation, stories about work, her children, and mundane observations about the town, yet beneath the surface was an undeniable tension, a gentle current of attraction neither of them dared to fully acknowledge. As they cleared the table together, side by side, their hands brushed occasionally, each contact sending a small shiver through Emily's chest, and she realized that the warmth she felt in his presence went far beyond casual affection. Ryan noticed the subtle signs too, the way her eyes lingered on him for a moment longer than necessary, the soft sighs she released when concentrating on a task, and the gentle smile that surfaced whenever he complimented something she had done. The connection between them, innocent in its beginnings, had grown into something layered and complex, filled with tender emotion, longing, and a romantic tension neither could ignore. Emily felt an ache in her chest, a mixture of desire and restraint, as she considered the boundaries of their relationship, the societal expectations, and the undeniable chemistry that had been building since that first morning when he fixed her car. Ryan spoke gently, his voice carrying warmth and sincerity, acknowledging the bond they had developed without crossing any lines, yet leaving a space for unspoken feelings to linger in the air between them. They continued their work around the house after dinner, laughing softly at small mistakes, sharing quiet moments of silence that felt heavy with meaning, and Emily noticed how every glance, every subtle gesture, deepened the emotional intimacy she felt with him. At one point, while adjusting a lamp near the window, their hands met again, and the contact was longer this time, deliberate yet gentle, sparking a flutter of emotion that made Emily's breath catch. She looked up, meeting his eyes, and in that moment, the world seemed to hold its breath, leaving only the two of them in a suspended reality filled with unspoken words, longing, and the bittersweet ache of feelings not fully explored. Ryan, aware of the emotional weight of the moment, softened his gaze, his voice dropping slightly as he said, "Emily, I don't want to make things complicated, but I care about you." Those words, simple yet profound, hit Emily with an intensity she hadn't anticipated, leaving her heart pounding and her mind swirling with conflicting emotions. She felt the truth of her own feelings mirrored in his honesty, the gentle acknowledgement of a bond that had grown naturally, tenderly, and unexpectedly, leaving her both exhilarated and apprehensive. They stood in the warm glow of the living room, rain softly tapping against the windows, and Emily realized that what had started as casual help and shared chores had evolved into a deeply emotional connection, a delicate dance of attraction, admiration, and heartfelt understanding. Every shared smile, every fleeting touch, and every lingering glance had built a foundation of trust, warmth, and subtle romantic tension, and Emily recognized that the bond they shared was not fleeting. It was a quiet awakening of emotions she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. The night continued with small, intimate moments, Ryan offering to help with tasks around the house, Emily laughing at his light teasing, and both of them sharing glances that conveyed more than words ever could. The air between them was charged with emotion, tender and innocent, yet undeniably romantic, a delicate balance of longing and restraint that neither could ignore. Emily's thoughts kept returning to the stormy evening when he had come to help her, the way he had handled everything with care and attentiveness, and she realized that her feelings had been growing ever since, subtle but powerful, shaping her thoughts and coloring her emotions with a warmth she hadn't felt in a long time. Ryan, too, felt the shift, aware of the depth of his own feelings, the admiration he held for Emily, and the quiet thrill that accompanied every shared smile or gentle touch. They lingered near the doorway when he finally prepared to leave, exchanging one last look that held unspoken promises, gentle longing, and a quiet acknowledgement of the emotions they both felt but could not yet fully name. Emily felt a mixture of exhilaration and uncertainty, knowing that navigating these feelings would require care, patience, and honesty, yet also aware that this connection, tender and emotionally charged, was something she could not ignore. As Ryan walked away, the soft rain falling around him, Emily closed the door slowly, leaning against it with a quiet sigh, reflecting on the journey of their relationship from that first morning when he fixed her car to this night filled with subtle romance, laughter, and heartfelt connection. She realized that life had given her an unexpected gift, a bond that was emotional, tender, and romantic without being reckless, a connection that awakened her heart, made her feel truly seen, and promised moments of joy, warmth, and emotional intimacy that she had longed for without knowing it. Emily knew that the days ahead would require careful steps, honest conversations, and mutual understanding, but she also understood that the foundation they had built, rooted in trust, care, and subtle attraction, was strong and meaningful. She felt a quiet hope and anticipation, aware that this connection with Ryan could grow into something profoundly beautiful, filled with emotional depth, romance, and the gentle unfolding of feelings that had begun to bloom in both of their hearts. That night, as she went to bed, Emily's thoughts lingered on the evening, the soft touches, the unspoken words, the shared laughter, and the quiet tension that made her heart race, realizing that the story between them was only beginning, a journey of emotional discovery, romantic longing, and heartfelt connection that would continue to shape her life in ways she had never imagined, leaving her with a sense of hope, warmth, and the thrilling possibility of love that was tender, respectful, and deeply moving. The connection had evolved from simple gratitude into a complex tapestry of emotion, a delicate yet undeniable bond that promised growth, understanding, and moments of intimacy both emotional and romantic, yet entirely wholesome and YouTube-friendly, leaving Emily aware that her life had shifted in subtle, powerful ways and that the presence of Ryan in her life had become a source of joy, excitement, and heartfelt emotion she would cherish as the story of their unfolding relationship continued to write itself in quiet, meaningful ways.